Hello, my name is Professor Kim Soo-won. I teach at Graduate School of International and Area Studies, Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. In this lecture, we are going to talk about cultural heritage diplomacy. In the first session, we are going to look at cultural heritage diplomacy in the particular context of the Korean Peninsula. UNESCO's Declaration of the Principles of International Cultural Cooperation, which is established in 1966, stipulates that every human being has the right and duty to develop his or her own culture. Definition of culture varies. The most common understanding of culture would be culture as a product of the material and mental processes through which individuals or human groups in a society change nature. A Senegalese poet, Léopold Sédar Senghor, wrote, "Culture is the be-all and end-all of development." This class focuses on rather narrow and a particular type of cultural products: cultural heritage. Cultural heritage refers to all the cultural products of a national or human society, which include science, technology, customs, norms, varied cultural assets, and cultural styles, both spiritual and material, that have value to be passed on to the next or younger generation for future cultural development. Cultural heritages help to promote identity and brand of nations and regions. They also enhance community belonging, quality of life, and visitor experiences. Cultural heritage is also important for economy of a nation and the region. Developing countries can secure their own identity and achieve economic benefits through cultural tourism. Additionally, cultural heritage tourism contributes to sustainable development and growth. Cultural tourism is environmentally friendly and sustainable, and it simultaneously shows the development potential. UNESCO World Heritage Sites are designated by UNESCO for cultural or natural heritage that must be protected by all humankind. In 1972, when a related treaty was passed by the UNESCO General Assembly, a number of big-name natural heritages were listed. Yellowstone National Park in the United States and the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador were listed for the first time. Since it recognizes its value, the economic ripple effect is significant, mostly via revenues from increasing tourism. Similarly, cultural heritage has sufficient value as a driving force for development to the point where it is called the heritage industry. The World Bank and the United Nations Development Program have invested in the restoration, management, and utilization of cultural heritage and historical sites for development. Cultural heritage has a significant impact on the creative economy, including tourism economy, of course. Cultural heritage contributes not only to economic value, but also to the identity, pride, and social integration. This class examines Korea's contributive diplomacy in the cultural heritage. Before we get started from a more global perspective, I'd like to explain a unique condition of the Korean Peninsula and how cultural heritage diplomacy can be contributive diplomacy in the particular circumstance. The North Korea. The South Korean government states that cooperation for the protection of national cultural heritage in North Korea cannot be overemphasized. Active cooperation is needed to recognize and preserve the value of national culture with a long-term view of history. The primary purpose of protecting North Korea's national cultural heritage is to preserve the nation's common cultural heritage and pass it on to the next future generations by establishing conservation, management, and rescue measures for the national cultural heritages located in North Korea. Furthermore, protecting North Korea's national cultural heritage will contribute to restoring national homogeneity through joint research and preservation efforts on national cultural heritage. A report titled North Korea's Cultural Property Policy and Inter-Korean Cultural Heritage Cooperation, published by the Ministry of Unification, suggests 4 policy areas that require actions. First, an accurate survey of the current status of North Korean cultural assets. Second, a manual for joint South-North cooperation projects. Third, collaborative efforts that are needed to register the excellent cultural properties of North and South Korea as World Cultural Heritage. And finally, the fourth, a joint response to cultural properties located outside Korea. And now, let me introduce a few cases. The first example is joint excavation. The North and South joint excavation of Manoldae in Kaesong, which was conducted from 2007 to 2018, was successful in unearthing about 17,900 artifacts, including about 40 building sites and metal type, celadon, and ceramics. And second, another example is joint registration of World Cultural Heritage. North Korea was originally critical of intangible cultural heritage. But in 2012, North Korea adopted National Heritage Protection Act and excavated and managed all cultural heritage, including intangible cultural ones. As part of a joint cooperation project with North Korea, South Korea jointly registered Shirim as a UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage in 2018. The role of inter-Korean cultural heritage diplomacy is even more important at a time when inter-Korean cooperation requires a new approach in this era of sustainable development. This can ultimately lead to peace, contributive diplomacy for the region and the world. In this first session, I introduced cultural heritage diplomacy, but in a particular context of the Korean Peninsula. Thank you.